Let's talk civil and site work, that which is required by the California Fire Code, and that which would be associated with NFPA 13 for fire sprinkler systems, and NFPA 24, the underground fire service mains supporting fire hydrants and fire sprinkler systems. Civil site work, for FLS, is the establishment of or modification to fire department emergency access via fire lanes and pathways to the site and within the site to buildings, fire service water supply for automatic fire sprinklers and fire hydrant systems. Important to note that not all buildings will be provided with fire sprinklers. However, all campus sites must have a viable fire hydrant system and water supply. When fire sprinklers are required, they are to be designed and installed in accordance with the adopted edition of NFPA 13 and NFPA 24, the standard for installation of private fire service mains. Work associated with the civil elements and the site work consists of establishing and constructing the fire department fire lanes and installation of underground fire service mains to serve on-site fire hydrants and or the fire sprinkler system lateral mains. In this module, we'll be discussing the Fire Department Emergency Vehicle Access as referenced in California Fire Code, Chapter 5. Fire Department access. Always important that the project inspector ensure that required fire lanes and Fire Department emergency vehicle access is maintained clear and unimpeded at all times. When such work on site must obstruct a fire lane for temporary reasons, it is important that the project inspector notify the local fire authority. What might constitute a temporary reason? Unloading of materials at the site where a vehicle needs to block the fire lane so that gradals and leather lift equipment can transfer loads from the vehicle to the site. Why we ensure that fire lanes and fire department access is constructed to appropriate standards? Well, failure of these roadways and drivable surfaces can be detrimental to the responding firefighters, can cause damage to the equipment and injury to personnel. This picture shown here is an example of why proper instruction of the construction of fire lanes is important. Fire lanes for DSA may consist of clearly defined roadways or just striped routes on a playground surface. Either way, the minimum width should be maintained as 20 feet with a 13-foot 6-inch vertical clearance. What's wrong here? Well, where's that light standard situated? How about those bleachers? The fire lane is obstructed by the bleachers and the stadium lighting pole. As can be seen on the right-hand side of the picture, the red stripe is the outline of the fire lane direction. So the project inspector responsibilities for site work can verify that the fire department access, be it roadway or walkable surface, complies with the DSA approved documents. Fire lanes need to be of an all-weather drivable surface during construction. They need to be located as indicated on the approved plans. The dimensions, minimum height and clear width, that the vehicle loading is appropriate for the design of the roadway. Traffic calming devices, sometimes used, are not permitted by DSA unless such devices have received specific local fire agency approval. Traffic calming devices may cause damage to responding vehicles. Signage for the fire lanes. No parking fire lane must also state the California Vehicle Code section to be applicable, CVC 22500.1. Refer to Inspection Card Section 7, Block 30. Fire departments utilize different types and styles of vehicles, so vehicle loading and location may change. important to look at the DSA Form 810 as part of the drawing package and the plans. Fire lanes through asphalt-covered playgrounds must be able to support fire apparatus. On existing campuses, verify that the civil engineer has tested the location where the fire lanes are going to occur for proper loading. This should be indicated on the civil drawing. Fire lanes. Depending on building location in relation to the fire lane, ladder truck setup areas may be needed. This may dictate increased design load for the roadway surface or increased width so that the ladder truck can set up properly. Any special conditions such as this may be found on DSA Form 810. Any fire department special condition should already have been incorporated into the DSA approved project drawings. Another feature of fire lanes pertains to the signage. It is important that fire lanes be maintained clear and accessible at all times. As such, they must be signed "No Parking Fire Lane" and include a reference to California Vehicle Code Section 22500.1. Here are some other examples of fire lane marking that is acceptable. Curb markings, post-mounted signs, and in the right-hand picture you can see a low-profile traffic calming device, commonly referred to as a speed bump. This has been approved by the local fire authority due to the profile. Fire department emergency access roads must be installed prior to loading the site with combustible materials. At this stage early in the project, they may consist of compacted decomposed granite or may be constructed up to the first lift of asphalt. Perimeter access gates need to be verified as to location, the swing, and type of hardware. Here are a couple of examples of gates. Notice the panic hardware on the pedestrian site gate, and of course the rolling vehicular gate, which is 20 feet minimum in width. In this case, the gate is manual. Site egress is very important, especially for construction on new buildings on existing sites. Students, staff, and visitors must be able to exit any building and make their way to the street unimpeded. Site gates encountered along the exit route with improper hardware can impede this egress. Campuses may be fenced. In such areas, and in cases such as these, the egress from the buildings must lead to an approved safe dispersal area designed to accommodate the anticipated occupant load calculated at 3 square feet per person. Well, what's wrong here? We just talked about panic hardware, but there's a sign here. The sign states, "Students use nurse's door or project site gate." Gates and panic hardware cannot be tampered with. Required means of egress must be maintained at all times. Notice in this picture as well that this is a double gate with a padlock in the upper right-hand corner with a manual slide bolt and a cane bolt, which you can see under the statement. This is not a violation, as the gate on the right-hand side is not an egress gate. When safe dispersal areas are provided, verify the egress path. It must meet the same conditions as that to a public way, in that it must be clear, unobstructed, defined, and unimpeded. Where safe dispersal areas are used, they must be located a minimum of 50 feet from all buildings on the campus. A campus may have multiple safe dispersal areas depending on its layout. Kindergartens at elementary schools often have their own safe dispersal area due to the ages and abilities of the small children. Verify that the egress route to a safe dispersal area is as indicated on the approved plans. Verifying safe dispersal areas, elements may be identified in grading or flat work plan sheets, so the inspector needs to be familiar with the project plan set. It is part of the egress system, so egress pathway lighting is required and to be provided. Verify the distance from buildings and structures. Ensure that 50-foot dimension is provided. The size, the area assigned to the SDA, should be as indicated on the drawings, and that the pathworks are unobstructed. We want free access for all staff and visitors to a safe dispersal area, along an all-weather surface pathway with compliant gates. Where gates are provided, they must include panic hardware along the egress path of travel. There are instances when gates are allowed to be locked, such as at a stadium where there are large crowd gates and vehicle gates that are used for egress. In this condition, the school must provide a person to station at that gate at all times to ensure that it is open and unlocked. Where campuses have safe dispersal areas, the project inspector should note that it is important that they remain functional at all times during construction and not be impacted during demolition or any construction. If parts of construction are going to obstruct egress pathways, ask the contractor or the architect to provide an alternate egress plan be submitted to DSA FLS for approval. Deviations to accommodate construction are permitted. Gates occurring along the egress route must be equipped with panic hardware. No additional locking devices or cane bolts. Here's an example of DSA Form 810. Review the district official signature for use of any alternate materials. Alternate materials, if applied to the project, will be indicated in blocks 4 through 7A of the form. When an alternate means is utilized, acknowledgement must be reflected by the school district and signature from the local fire authority.